Hare Krishna, welcome everyone. Good to see you all. Tonight we're continuing with our study of the Nectar of Devotion, the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And tonight we are covering the 19th chapter, which is the last chapter of this section of Sadhana Bhakti. And we're hearing, it's the first side of the ocean, the eastern division of the Nectar of Devotion, the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And tonight is the final chapter or the final part of the eastern division. So this section or this division has four parts: Samanya Bhakti, Sadhana Bhakti, Bhava Bhakti, and Prema Bhakti. And tonight we're finishing chapter 19, which is Prema Bhakti, which means that next week we will do an overview of the 19 chapters in preparation for your exam on the Nectar of Devotion. So as usual, if you have any questions or any comments as we go, then please ask. So tonight we'll cover chapter 19, which is entitled Devotional Service in Pure Love of God. Chapter 19 discusses Prema Bhakti, the fourth wave of the Eastern Ocean. The philosophical discussion of Prema is quite brief because Prema is simply the mature state of Bhava. And Srila Rupa Goswami has already described Bhava extensively. Bhava softens the heart. Prema softens it completely. When Bhava deepens to its maximum point, it is called Prema. Srila Rupa Goswami described Bhava as a ray of Prema. Both the sun and the sun ray possess light, but each gives off a different intensity. Similarly, both Bhava and Prema possess ecstatic love of God, but such love is not as intense at Bhava as it becomes at Prema. So Bhava Bhakti refers to the stage of Bhakti where our eternal relationship with Krishna, our Swarupa, it becomes manifest, it becomes understood, it becomes known by the devotee. We understand our eternal relationship with Krishna. This is what takes place at the platform of Bhava. Now, when we reach this platform of Bhava, Bhava is called Premankur. Premankur means the seed or the precursor of Prema Bhakti, love of Godhead. Love of Godhead fully manifests after Bhava Bhakti is attained because one understands his eternal relationship with Krishna. And then, as Prabhupada has described to us, generally what will take place is a devotee will go to the universe where Krishna is currently performing his pastimes. And when he arrives there, he is trained by the Nityaparikas, Krishna's eternal associates, and he is trained how to serve Krishna. He is trained how to serve Krishna in the particular rasa that he is attached to Krishna in. And by the association of the Krishna's eternal associates, one fully develops prema, or prema fully manifests in his consciousness. So this is ecstatic love of Godhead, Bhava Bhakti, and it is called Premankur, which means it manifests fully into Prema Bhakti, which is perfection. It is, Rupa Goswami describes Bhava Bhakti and Prema Bhakti as Sajja. Saja means perfection. In other words, it is what we are aiming for in our devotional service. We want to attain perfection. And this perfection is attained by practicing our sadhana sincerely. What we're aiming for, the saja, is Bhava Bhakti, Prema Bhakti, to enter into our eternal relationship with Krishna. So, what is the definition of prema? So, a verse is given in Sanskrit, which is also quoted in Madhya Lila of Chaitanya Charitamrita, chapter 23, verse 7. And this verse describes what is prema bhakti, so that we can actually understand the definition of love of Godhead. Samyan masrinita swanto mamatwa ti sha yankita bhava saeva sandratma buddhai prema nigajyate. When that bhava softens the heart completely, being endowed with a great feeling of possessiveness in relation to the Lord, and becomes very much condensed and intensified, it is called prema, love of Godhead, by learned scholars. So this is the definition of prema bhakti. When the heart becomes completely soft, it melts. And we all had this experience in life, that the heart melts in the association of our gurus, in the association of advanced devotees, purified devotees. The heart melts. We can all identify to this sentiment. And that is why we need to associate with advanced devotees and become initiated by a bona fide spiritual master, and take shelter of various gurus, senior Vaishnavas. The reason is because it will purify our consciousness. And then it will soften our heart, and then we can understand something of what it means to attain love for Krishna. So that is why we need the association of the advanced devotees, because they qualify us. The spiritual master in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Prabhupada explains the guru is known as Ashraya Vigraha. Ashraya Vigraha means the form of shelter. The form of shelter means we gain shelter from the spiritual masters, and they train us how to attain love of Godhead. They qualify us so that we can attain love of Godhead, so we can become eternal servants of Krishna. And when you associate with these devotees, then the heart softens. And that is the beginning of our heart softening completely. You know, when we become attached to advanced devotees and our gurus, then the heart begins to melt, it begins to soften by becoming attached to these advanced devotees, by becoming attached to these gurus, right? The heart will become soft. So this is the beginning of our heart fully softening to the platform of love of Godhead, prema, because it describes here specifically, the heart becomes soft at the platform of bhava and then prema bhakti. So by associating with advanced devotees, it begins to soften the heart, because the gurus are training us how to become attached to Krishna. Because at this point in time, we are not attached to Krishna. That is one of our defects. We don't have love of Godhead. We're not attached to Krishna. So how do we become attached to Krishna? Right? We have to become qualified. We have to soften the heart. So first of all, we serve the gurus, we serve the advanced devotees. Then gradually we'll develop attachment to Krishna himself. And then that attachment will become very powerful. That's called bhava, where we actually feel ecstatic emotions in a particular rasa towards Krishna. And then that will intensify into prema, and the heart will fully melt, and we will fully manifest love of Godhead. This is Srila Rupa Goswami's definition of prema bhakti, which he confirms with the following quote. In the Narada Pancharatra, it is clearly stated that when lust is transferred to the Supreme Godhead and the concept of kinship is completely reposed in him, such is accepted as pure love of God by great authorities like Bhishma, Prahlad, Uddhava, and Narada. That's from Nectar of Devotion, page 143. So we've become contaminated. All of us, Nityasiddha Krishna Prema. It explains in Chaitanya Charitamrita that Krishna Prema, love of God, is eternally residing within our hearts, but it's in a dormant form. And at the moment, that love for Krishna, it manifests as lust, as calm, as a desire to enjoy our senses within this material world. Now, when we repose that propensity to become attached to something, to become attached to someone, and to want to serve that person, when we repose that upon Krishna, then we begin to develop love of Godhead. So we have to repose our propensity to become attached, our propensity to love towards Krishna. First through the advanced devotees, the gurus, and then in turn towards Krishna. This is also page 143 of the Nectar of Devotion. Rupa Goswami explains further, great authorities like Bhishma have explained that love of Godhead means completely giving up all so-called love for any other person. According to Bhishma, love means reposing one's affection completely upon one person, withdrawing all affinities for any other person. So this is a definition of love of God. Ekeha kurunandana. It must be fixed, one-pointed. Vyavasayatmika buddhi. It must be fixed just on one point, which is Krishna. Now we understand from the beginning of the Nectar of Devotion, Krishnanushilanam, Anukuyena Krishnanushilanam Bhakti Uttama. The definition of pure bhakti is we repose our bhakti exclusively on Krishna, but exclusively reposing one's loving propensity on Krishna automatically means his associates and devotees. So both will happen simultaneously. So the definition of love of God is that we must focus the consciousness on Krishna alone, which to us means Krishna and his associates. We don't see them as separate. Primary and secondary characteristics. So prema has primary characteristics and secondary characteristics. The primary characteristic of prema is bhava saeva sandra. So, primary characteristic contains Sanjana Vishad, condensed, infinite, uncapable, by Krishna. And one is completely absorbed in Krishna, so much so, nothing else can penetrate one's consciousness. Right? That is the definition of love of God. Nothing else can penetrate one's consciousness. One's not attached to anything except Krishna. So that is Sanjana. That's the primary characteristic of love of Godhead.
Keshava.
Nothing else enters one's consciousness.
Keshava.
The secondary characteristics of prema are samyan, mashnita, swanto. It completely softens the heart. And mamatwa, atishayan kita. It is marked by a highly possessive ownership of Sri Krishna. So one's heart becomes completely softened. It melts in love. And one enters one's particular rasa with Krishna. That's the secondary characteristic of prema. And it is marked by mamata. Mamata means ownership of Krishna. Aham mameti. A devotee who has love of God, he thinks, I am Krishna's servant and Krishna is my master. So that is the secondary characteristic of prema. That one thinks that only Krishna is his master. So one becomes highly possessive of Krishna. Now, when we come to the gopis of Vrindavan, we understand there are two camps of gopis. There are the left-wing gopis, the right-wing gopis. The right-wing gopis have that mamata, or feeling that they belong to Krishna, and the left-wing gopis have that mamata, or the feeling that Krishna belongs to us. So there is that mood of possessiveness, but the mood is slightly different, or quite different in the case of the gopis' love for Krishna. Mamatwa, highly possessive ownership of Krishna. Ordinary devotional service has the mood of tadiya, I am Krishna's. Prema bhakti, however, has a mood of mamatwa, or Krishna is mine, which is seen the most in the left-wing gopis of Vrindavan, and in particular in the mood of Srimati Radharani herself. In Bhava Bhakti, one sees the Lord and understands his eternal relationship with Krishna. In Prema Bhakti, one actually enters the Lord's pastimes, or his or her eternal spiritual identity, overwhelmed by the mood that Krishna is my son, or Krishna is my friend, or Krishna is my lover. So on the platform of Bhava, one has darshan of Krishna. His love is so strong at the platform of Bhava that one sees Krishna in spurti, or in manifestations. Krishna manifests himself into the consciousness of the devotee, and the devotee actually has darshan of Krishna himself, but because the devotee has not quite reached the level of prema, Krishna disappears, and that drives the devotee mad, and then the devotee in his divine madness searches after Krishna again in his consciousness. So this is the platform of a devotee on the platform of Bhava. He sees Krishna. He understands his relationship with Krishna, desires to see Krishna intensely, and Krishna manifests to him temporarily, but then disappears. At the level of prema, one becomes so intense in one's bhava that one then cannot live, his love becomes so intense and so thick that he cannot live without Krishna, and then Krishna fully manifests himself to the devotee, takes the devotee back into Goloka Vrindavan, and allows the devotee to have continuous association and pastimes with Krishna. So that is the platform that we're aiming for. Now, achieving prema. There are two ways to achieve prema: by the maturation of bhava and by the Lord's extraordinary mercy. So you can attain prema actually by sadhana bhakti, by practice, and gradually raise yourself to that level, or by kripa. Kripa means the Lord gives you special mercy and delivers you straight to that level of prema bhakti. We're studying the Chaitanya Charitamrita at the moment in Melbourne, and we see that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, while he's traveling through South India, he would just glance at people, and because he was so premavesh, which means so intoxicated and divinely mad in love of Godhead, and because his consciousness, his personality was permeating love of Godhead, anyone who came into his association and just received his glance would automatically, spontaneously develop prema, or love of Krishna. So that's one way that we can receive prema bhakti, or the other way is by gradually practicing sadhana and rising to the platform of prema. There are two subdivisions of prema arising from bhava: vaidhi, bhavotto, prema arising from bhava, achieved through vaidhi sadhana, and raganugiya, bhavato, prema arising from bhava, achieved through raganuga sadhana. Because we heard from chapters 6 to 16, we heard the description of vaidhi sadhana bhakti, and also raganuga sadhana bhakti. Prema arising from bhava, achieved through vaidhi sadhana. This is from page 144 of the Nectar of Devotion. A devotee, in the course of executing the regulative principles of devotional service, develops his natural Krishna consciousness, and being thus softened at heart, he chants and dances like a madman. While performing chanting of the holy name of the Lord, he sometimes cries, sometimes talks wildly, sometimes sings, and sometimes, without caring for any outer consideration, dances like a madman. So this shows how, by practicing vaidhi, by practicing devotional service in practice over the course of our lifetime, or even over many lifetimes, we can gradually rise to the platform of bhava bhakti. Now, prema arising from bhava, achieved through raganuga sadhana. Srila Rupa Goswami cites the story of Chandrakanti from Padma Purana. Chandrakanti practiced raganuga sadhana, striving to develop the mood of the ragatmikas of Vrindavan, specifically the gopis. By this practice, she achieved bhava, at which point she decided to accept no one else but Krishna as her husband. This complete indifference to anyone other than Krishna is one of the 9 symptoms of bhava, virakti. So she was Chandrakanti was practicing Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti. She was meditating on the gopis, the eternal Brijbasis, the eternal associates of Krishna. And she was following in their footsteps in that she stayed up all night meditating on the Rasa Leela, the Rasa dance with Krishna, and dancing and chanting in the temple for the entire night in the mood of the gopis. This is called Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti. And by doing this practice, what did she attain? She attained love of Godhead. She rose to the platform of love of Godhead. So we need to understand this point. We need to understand how to attain love of Godhead. We can do it through Vaidhi, through practicing the rules and regulations, or by deeply absorbing ourselves and following in the footsteps of the eternal residents of Vrindavan, which is called Raganuga Bhakti. And this will help us to raise to the platform of love of Krishna. Prema arising from bhava, achieved through Raganuga sadhana. By maturation of her bhava bhakti, Chandrakanti began to constantly engage in meditation on Krishna's form, with the concept that Krishna is my lover. This is mamatva, a symptom of prema. Thus she achieved prema by maturation of the bhava she had achieved through Raganuga sadhana. So she raised to the platform of being able to constantly meditate on Krishna's form, following in the mood of the gopis. So this is called mamatva. Mamatva means Krishna is my Lord. So here Rupa Goswami is teaching us how to achieve prema bhakti. The different methods or the different paths or the different ways that we can follow to achieve prema bhakti. Because we must understand, prema is our goal. It is the goal of the Krishna consciousness movement. As I've said many times, maybe in these classes, but in other classes, that, there's a saying in English, do not board a ship unless you know its destination. So in other words, if you don't know the destination of a vessel, then it may not be wise to hop on board of that ship or that vessel. Of course, you can do it. You can live your life like that. You can just jump on any ship or any train or any plane or some transport and just go. And that's one way to live life. But if you want to get to a particular destination, then you have to get on a particular mode of transport. And in the same way, if you want to attain love for Krishna, Krishna prema, which is our goal, we have to be very definite about how to achieve that goal, because it doesn't happen automatically. We have to be very definite about where we're heading and how to attain it. So Rupa Goswami in this book, The Nectar of Devotion, the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, he is teaching us how to attain love of God. Right? What is the methodology to attain love for Krishna? What is love for Krishna? That's also explained in this book. So we're very clear about what our goal is and how to attain it. Prema can come through practice, and prema can also come through kripa. Kripa means mercy. So Srimad Bhagavatam 11:12:7 explains. So this is from page 144 of the Nectar of Devotion. Lord Krishna tells Uddhava, the gopis of Vrindavan did not study the Vedas to achieve me, nor had they ever been in the holy places of pilgrimage, nor did they ever devoutly execute any regulative principle, nor did they undergo any kind of austerity. It is simply by my association that they have attained the highest perfection of devotional service. So Krishna here is speaking to Uddhava. This is in the Uddhava Gita. Uddhava Gita is the conversation that Krishna had with Uddhava before he left this material world. Right? Before Krishna returned back to Goloka, he spoke to Uddhava. So it's called Uddhava Gita. It is in the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. We're very conversant with the Bhagavad Gita, which is what we'll study next, the Bhagavad Gita. But even more intimate than the Uddhava Gita, than the Bhagavad Gita, is the Uddhava Gita. Because in the Uddhava Gita, Krishna directly speaks about the gopis, for example. In the Bhagavad Gita, he does not directly speak. He speaks about love of Godhead and prema bhakti, pure devotional service. But he does not speak about the residents of Vrindavan, for example. Whereas in the Nectar of Devotion, we hear the Uddhava Gita is quoted, and in the Uddhava Gita, it explains that Krishna directly speaks about the eternal residents of Vrindavan, because Krishna had sent Uddhava to Vrindavan. That's explained in the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam, chapters 46, 47, Brahmara Gita, that Uddhava was the greatest devotee in Mathura, in Dwarka. He was the greatest of the Yadus. He had the most attachment to Krishna out of any devotee outside of Vrindavan. So Krishna desired that Uddhava see the love of the residents of Vrindavan. So to show the love of the residents of Vrindavan, Krishna sent Uddhava to Vrindavan to witness this love. And then he could understand there was a love that existed which was even more powerful than the love that he had for Krishna. So he went to Vrindavan and he saw the love of the Brijbasis, which was far surpassed any love he'd experienced before. Now, when he was in Vrindavan, he met the gopis and he witnessed their love. And he saw, in particular, the love of Srimati Radharani and how that was the zenith of love. It was the topmost experience of love of Godhead. Now, Uddhava says here, or Krishna is actually speaking to Uddhava, because Krishna had sent Uddhava previously to Vrindavan. He says, the gopis of Vrindavan did not study the Vedas to achieve me. It's an interesting point because we're doing our Bhakti Shastri course right now. You know, everyone's studying the Bhakti Shastri. The gopis don't do this. The gopis don't study Bhagavatam and study the Bhagavad Gita and write exams because they've already attained love for Krishna. Nor had they been to all the holy places of pilgrimage. They had never left Vrindavan. Normally we go to all the places of pilgrimage to purify ourselves, but they were so pure they did not need to leave Vrindavan, which is the topmost holy place. And in Vrindavan, all other holy places reside in their original form. Then It says, nor did they ever devoutly execute any regulative principle, meaning they weren't chanting 16 rounds a day. The gopis do not need to chant 16 rounds a day because they chant Krishna's name spontaneously. They always think of Krishna. We have to follow sadhana so that we can learn to think of Krishna. But they had already achieved this. Nor did they undergo any kind of austerity. Right? They weren't doing tapasya in the traditional sense, as people do to attain some spiritual goal. It is simply by my association, Krishna says, that they have attained the highest perfection of devotional service, because they already had love for Krishna. So therefore they had attained perfection, and we are trying to follow in their footsteps so that we can also attain perfection. So there are two types of prema described. Mahatmya Jnana, prema mixed with knowledge of the Lord's majesty, and Kevala, unmixed, pure prema. Srila Prabhupada writes that prema, this is on page 145, can be placed under two headings. One is profound veneration for the greatness of the Lord, and the other is one's being automatically attracted to Krishna without any extraneous consideration. So there are these two types of prema. One is the love of the residents of Vaikuntha, and the other one is the love of the residents of Goloka. One is infused with awe and reverence, and one is completely spontaneous and based on sambandha or relationship with Krishna as a friend, as a parent, or as a lover. So these are the two types of prema which exist. Now, of course, we are following the footsteps of Chaitanya. We're following in the footsteps of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to attempt to experience the love that the residents of Vrindavan have for Krishna. So this Mahatmya Jnana Prema, the type of prema that the residents of Vaikuntha have, this is explained on page 145 of the Nectar of Devotion. From the Narada Pancharatra. If on account of profound veneration for the greatness of the Supreme Lord, one attains a great affection and steady love for him, one is certainly assured of achieving the four kinds of Vaishnava liberation. So, those who follow in the footsteps of the residents of Vaikuntha, who worship Lakshmi Narayan, the Vaikuntha forms of the Lord, and serve him in that way with awe and reverence, they achieve the four types of liberation: Salokya, Shastri, Samipya, and Sarupya. Kevala Prema, pure and one-pointed prema, is not even slightly mixed with any other aspiration or interest, such as aspiration for Vaikuntha liberation or interest in the Lord's profound power and opulence. So it is described here that those who are in Vrindavan, or those who are following the footsteps of the residents of Vrindavan in Raganuga Bhakti, they don't have any aspiration to worship the Lord with awe and reverence as those in Vaikuntha do. A devotee with one-pointed love, Kevala Prema, always lovingly fixes his mind upon Sri Krishna without the slightest deviation toward any other topic. Srila Rupa Goswami explains that by quoting from Narada Pancharatra, this is from page 145 of Nectar of Devotion, if a devotee is continuously in love with Lord Krishna and his mind is always fixed upon him, that devotional attitude will prove to be the only means of attracting the attention of the Lord. In other words, a Vaishnava who is always thinking of the form of Lord Krishna is to be known as a pure Vaishnava. So this is an interesting point. So if one is always focusing on Krishna, and Prabhupada explains this in chapter 11 or 12 of the Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada gives a purport near the end of the chapter where he says, one should not even deviate his mind to any other form of the Lord except for Krishna in Vrindavan. So if one is focusing like that, only fixing his mind on Krishna in Vrindavan, and is always meditating, then he is a Kevala Bhakta. He will follow through his Raganuga Bhakti, he'll follow the footsteps of the Ragatmika devotees of Vrindavan, and he will attain Goloka Vrindavan. So this is the teaching of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Devotees who achieve bhava from Raganuga sadhana can attain Kevala Prema, or the love that the residents of Vrindavan have. Now, Rupa Goswami gives an explanation of the 9 levels that we have to pass through from Shraddha to Prema, from Shraddha to pure love of Godhead. Generally, we attain Prema only by persistent, ardent practice, not by a sudden stroke of mercy. Rupa Goswami describes the gradual evolution from Shraddha to Prema. So this is quoted from, this is on page 146 of the Nectar of Devotion. It's also found within the Madhya Lila, chapter 23, verses 14 and 15. Now this of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, this description is actually derived from the 2nd chapter of the 1st canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. That's where Rupa Goswami took these 9 levels of bhakti that we speak about, which take us from Shraddha or faith to Prema or love of God. In the beginning, there must be faith. So spiritual life begins with faith. And our advancement is just an increase of our faith, or our Shraddha, our love, our faith in Krishna. One who has Prema has complete faith in Krishna, like Prabhupada. He had complete faith in Krishna. That is Shraddha. That is pure Shraddha on the level of Prema. Then one becomes interested in associating with pure devotees, sadhu sangha. So you get faith, and after a while you think, let me associate with those who are interested in also making spiritual advancement, associating with sadhus. Thereafter, one is initiated by the spiritual master and executes the regulative principles under his orders. So this is called bhajana kriya. Bhajan means worship. Kriya means with force. So you gain momentum, or like a momentum of force to serve Krishna. This comes from association. You associate with the devotees, they begin to push you towards Krishna. Then one is freed from all unwanted habits and becomes firmly fixed in devotional service. So this is called anatta nivritti. Anatta means giving up things which don't have any value, material desires. By practicing sadhana, we give up material desires And that leads us to Nishta. Nishta means we become fixed and steady in bhakti, in devotional service. Thereafter, one develops taste and attachment. So one develops ruchi and asakti, which are advanced levels of bhakti. And then in this way, the execution of devotional service according to the regulative principles, gradually emotion intensifies, which is called bhava, and finally there is the awakening of love, that is called prema. This is the gradual development of love of Godhead for the devotee interested in Krishna consciousness. So we have to go through these 9 levels. That's how we progress from Shraddha to prema, which is our goal. Now, the difficulty of understanding prema. We usually judge a person's success by how happy he or she has become. This standard is useless when applied to a prema bhakta. A devotee in prema is so inundated by waves of transcendental emotion that he or she cannot even perceive external happiness or distress. Consequently, attempting to measure success by conventional standards is fruitless. It also misses the point. So this is how we develop love for Krishna. It's very difficult to understand someone who has prema, just like Srila Prabhupada as an example. Now, he was a perfect Bengali gentleman from the external point of view. And someone who was uneducated in the science of bhakti, in the philosophy of bhakti yoga, then he may not have understood that Prabhupada possessed love of Godhead. He may have thought he was just a very polite and gentlemanly, very polite and well-mannered gentleman. Prabhupada once said, someone said, how can we, how will we recognize your followers? Prabhupada said, they are perfect ladies and gentlemen. So this may be one's perception. He may not understand, unless one has a philosophical understanding or an education, one may not understand the nature of love of Godhead. In the Narada Pancharatra, so this is from page 146 of the Nectar of Devotion, Lord Shiva tells Parvati, "My dear Supreme Goddess, you may know from me that anyone who has developed the ecstatic ecstasy of love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and who is always merged in transcendental bliss on account of this love, cannot even perceive the material distress or happiness coming from the body or mind." So one who is absorbed in love of Krishna, he loses attachment to the body and mind and just fully focuses on Krishna, which is, we see Prabhupada is the perfect example. Someone who was so elevated in consciousness, he had transcended the effects of the body and the mind and was just fully absorbed in practicing his devotional service in love for Krishna. Srila Rupa Goswami then refers the reader to the Brihad Bhagavatam Rita of Srila Sanatana Goswami for a more detailed description of the affections and dealings of Prema Bhakti. He ends the Eastern Division by offering obeisances to his guru, Srila Sanatana Goswami, and other prominent Goswamis. So, Srila Rupa Goswami says that if we want to understand the science of bhakti, we should read the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, which is said to be the seminal work of the six Goswamis. It was the first book completed by the six Goswamis, by the senior-most Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, and by studying this, all the other books of the Goswamis are based upon this book. So by studying Brihad Bhagavatamrita, we will get a complete understanding of the science of bhakti. So that's it for this chapter 19. So we've now completed chapters 1 to 19 of the Nectar of Devotion. And now, next week, we'll do an overview of these 19 chapters in preparation for our exam on the Nectar of Devotion. Does anyone have any questions or comments before we close on anything in relation to this?
I was just
book?
wondering about the two paths, the Vaidhi and the Raganuga. Like say later down the track.
Any questions, any comments?
Oh, can't you hear me?
Okay.
Can you hear me?
So thank you all for coming. And next week we'll do an overview class. We'll see you then. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Hare Krishna Babu.
Thank you for coming.
Hare Krishna Babu.
Shruti, Vishnujan, how are you?
Oh, good Babu. Babu, just one question, one request. Next week we'll be like doing Prabhupada appearance day at the temple.
Are you still there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hare Krishna Babu.
I can't hear you. Have to unmute.
I'll mute. I put my earphone, maybe.
Yeah. For some reason I can't hear.
Yeah.
Not sure why. I cannot hear.
That's good.
Still can't hear.
Okay. I call you, Babu. Easy.
I'm not sure why, but I can't hear you.
No, I call you. I call you.
Unfortunately.
I call you.
Okay. I'll speak to you soon.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna.